Sono un po' emozionato. Comincio in italiano una diretta, buongiorno a tutti, dal canale Francesco Facchini, un canale che spiega il senso e l'uso della tecnologia, di tutta questa tecnologia che ci circonda, di tutto il mondo che ci circonda, dei media, dei social, dell'intelligenza artificiale, della mobile content creation. Sono un po' emozionato perché comincio in italiano, ma switcherò in inglese perché l'ospite di oggi è uno che ha avuto la follia di cambiare il sistema, di cambiare il giornalismo, di cambiare un'intera industria che è l'industria dei media. E eccoci qua, questo è il mio sottopancio, ho messo subito il suo. Per un istante però ha avuto, come dire, un sogno e l'ha realizzato, cioè quella di cambiare la sua professione e di cambiare il suo mondo e ci è riuscito. Il suo nome è Glen Mulcahy e prima di farvelo vedere in video and to switch my chat in English and welcome everyone that is looking my YouTube channel. I will tell you that Glen Mulcahy is someone that changed my life and someone that changed a lot of journalists' life. Uh, with an incredible dream realized, and we will go on a chat with him just to know if this full guy coming from near Dublin, coming from Ireland, uh, arrived to change um, a job and an entire industry. Good morning to Glen Mulcahy and welcome to my live.
Buongiorno, Francesco. How are you? Sorry that it's so dark here.
So I think that you have to protect, perhaps you have to protect some of your sons that are still sleeping, and you have an incredible family, and you have an incredible life, and you had an incredible life. You made an incredible journey. First of all, Glenn, let's start with this, with your journey.
Mhm.
So the first question that I have, telling to the people that is seeing this live that they can drop their questions in the chat and we will answer because we will see every comment in every multi-point live that is on Facebook and on my YouTube channel. And so, first thing that I ask you is who was Glen Mulcahy, who is Glen Mulcahy, and who will be Glen Mulcahy?
Oh, wow. Okay, we're going to do a whole
Wow.
a whole hour on just that one question then, Francesco. Uh, who was Glenn Mulcahy? That's a great question. I'm just a guy who's now 51 who has spent most of his life living in Ireland. But in the last 10 years has had a great opportunity to get overseas and to travel an awful lot through my work. From quite a young age, I was a tinker in technology. It's the easiest way to describe it. So I was blowing things up and fixing things and stuff in my youth, in my young youth, usually toys, and then enjoyed.
You're a guy playing with technological toys like me, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So that was me as a youth. That was me as a young youth, and then in my teenage years, because of my dad, my late dad, I got access to video gear. He was an early adopter. I was really lucky. He had cameras, he had edit systems and stuff when I was in my early teens, 15, 16. And he allowed me to start using that camera gear. And I got bit by the bug pretty early. And yeah, I decided this is what I want to do with my life. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to be a camera person or a director or what at that stage, but I knew that I wanted to get into media production, possibly television. And that's kind of been the story from then up until about 8 years ago when I actually left the Irish broadcast RT and set up my own company with my wife, which is what is behind the event that we'll talk about later. So yeah, that's it. I've been a techie at heart the whole way through. But one interesting tidbit of information that most people don't know is that when I was leaving what we call secondary school, about to go into university, I applied to every media production course in Ireland. There was only 8 of them, but every one of them. And I got rejected from all of them. I got rejected from all of them. My actual uh, qualification per se is I studied fine art. So actually, most people don't know this, but technically I'm qualified as a fine artist. Although I did specialize in photography and a bit of video production. I was really lucky that the course I did actually had a video module as well. So there you go, a nugget of disinformation.
So, who is Glen Mulcahy now?
Now, well, you said some very very kind things at the introduction, and I'm both humbled and flattered by them. Um, Now I'm a guy just trying to stick to his conviction that there is a way to make a business model that can save journalism. And I've kind of, even though I wouldn't have probably answered that if you asked me that 5 years ago, I think particularly in the last couple of years post COVID, that's kind of become my focus. Ironically, it is trying to figure out, is there a way that we can keep the integrity and the essentialness of journalism with the business model that is sustainable? And while I didn't start out on this journey with that as my aim, I certainly have really come to the opinion that that is something that is now probably more pressing than most. With the rise of AI, disinformation, mass scale, and all the other things that I'm sure you're intimately aware of, Francesco, it's becoming incredibly difficult to maintain credible professional journalism just as a business. So yeah, that's who I am now. That's my calling, if you want to call it that. I'm trying to put my energy into making sure that I can empower people as much as possible and try and preserve the essential the essential service that is journalism.
Wow. Yes, I think you are a fool.
Yeah.
Someone that is trying to realize um, a system change, because I think we have to change the position of journalists, to change the models of journalism, to change the processes of journalism, and to change the delivery of journalism and the entire industry of media. And but let's continue with the question: Who will Glen Mulcahy be in the next 5 years, 10 years? I don't know.
You know, again, if you'd asked me that question 2 years ago, I probably would have seen myself doing what I'm doing, which is mostly training people in organizations around the world. But because I now deliver training in artificial intelligence and media production in particular, I can pretty much say hand on heart that by the end of this decade, what I do will probably be obsolete. In the same way that journalism is on a similar path as it looks right now. So who will I be? That's a crystal ball question. I'd love to be able to say, "Oh, I'm 51, so I've only got another 14 years, and then I can retire and chill out in the country and let my kids thrive." And that would be great. But increasingly, I'm starting to think it's actually probably unlikely. So I don't know who I will be, and I don't mean that to be evasive. I just mean genuinely. I think there are so many variables in the next 5 years that it's nigh and impossible to make a genuine prediction about where the hell things are going to go. If the great displacement of work that some AI specialists speak about becomes a reality, God knows what the hell the future holds.
I know one thing, that in your job, in your way to develop this project, that is has a lot of parts. I think your training career, Mojofest, Titanium, and all the things that you are developing, one thing will remain at the center. That is human being. Do you think that journalism will be um, in the future? I don't know, acted as a job in which human being, human skills, human capacity to deliver the context, probably not the text, will remain central or not? I think that's another quite good question. I don't want to achieve
Yeah.
your good feelings, but it's a central question. Where human being will remain in this job?
Yeah.
will be substituted or will remain central?
So yes, I have thoughts. um, I actually think we are quietly approaching a point of absolute polarization. And what I mean by that is, um, I think we are currently playing and toying with AI in a fairly low key level, and it's a lot of hype. But I do think a point is likely to come in the next 2 to 3 years as we reach AGI, where people will actually start to become very polarized. You will have the people who are all in, the kind of tech bro community who are early adopters and just love everything automated. But I think as a result of the lockdown phase of COVID, which is, I know it feels like a distant memory, but it's not that long ago, I think we will actually start to get a hyper value for the human touch. When you can automate so many different things, particularly in journalism, which is what you asked about, when businesses and companies can leverage AI to remove humans from the pipeline in order to improve efficiencies and hence attempt to improve profit. I think the one thing that might actually be missing, I really hope I'm right on this, but I could well be wrong, that people will value the voice of the journalist, of the human journalist, more than ever. And I think what we are going to see, and it's already started to happen, is a lean into the idea of personal brand journalism, persona led journalism, rather than big brand journalism. So, what I mean by that is, if you look at the trends and if you look at Gen Z already, the first point of contact for Gen Z is
Of
often influence.
course, I agree.
So I think the rise of the solo, the independent journalist, I don't like the word influencer, but the solo journalist uh, is likely to amplify and accelerate in response to mass automation. That's what I think.
Wow. I try to resume if I understood in a proper way, and for the moment, I give you a little gift. See who is sending us greetings. Urbano Garcia Alonso. Ciao
Oh,
Urbano.
oh,
Ciao
I
Big Brother.
look forward. Oh, it's been too long.
Yeah, it's been a long time that I don't see Urbano. It's a sort of hermano for me. Thank you for following this live. So I resume. You said polarization is going on, and the attempt of the companies and also of media companies will be to drop out from the pipeline human humans and journalists and automatize everything. Okay.
That-
In response of this, the solo journalism will grow up, and I don't think going mainstream, and create a sort of counterpart of this attempt of automatization. Is it right? My resume or not? Yeah, is
yeah,
right.
yeah, you're right. Your understanding of it is absolutely right. I think if we can just roll back to one thing, I think the first thing to say as a preface to this is that if you look at behaviors, traditional behaviors, our generation, sorry to be
Yeah,
ageist, but our
yeah,
generation, where we tended to go to one or two places, maybe three places, which were our voice of trust to get our news. Okay. With me, it would have been the station I used to work with, RTE, maybe a big national newspaper like the Irish Times, and maybe one of the big radio stations. Those would be my points of trust where I got my news from. But that behavior has, for the most part, completely shifted with the younger generation. So, in the same way that they don't look to one place for news, they look across a whole series of different platforms and around different topics. What we're clearly seeing is that they're starting to find journalists, hopefully professional journalists, because there's lots of people out there
yeah,
calling
yeah,
themselves professional journalists, accredited journalists, who they trust. So they're basically forming a more of a community relationship with the individual rather than the brand. And that trend has been alive and well since the rise of YouTube, so over a decade. But now I think it's definitely starting to take hold and root strongly within journalism. Just look at what Mehdi Hassan has done with Zateo. Look at Taylor Lorenz, who I met quite recently, and what she's doing on Substack. Like, there's lots of journalists who already have
yeah,
reach, who've started to build their own, effectively build their own niche and really well with a very substantial subscription
yeah.
follow on different
I,
platforms.
I nominate also Yusuf Omar.
Oh,
in
Yusuf is a
this in this kind of solo journalists that are that have become something like a world phenomenon,
mhm,
passing through the borders of journalism
mhm.
and states. Uh, so I have a great question for you. I mean, I have the question for you. Tell me something about the story of the community of mobile journalists coming from the starting from the beginning. Where were you when you had the idea? Was there a moment
Yep.
that you started to think that smartphone could be our instrument to deliver journalism? Was there a situation where were you with someone? I think that I know with the friend that you had on your side, but let let me hear you reconstructing the moment that you create this community of mobile journalists that was something like a world of people that desired that had the willing of change.
Okay, that's a big one too, isn't it? The very first touch point for me for mobile was before the iPhone. It was 2007, I remember quite vividly. I was making a case to my then boss for investing in, it wasn't even a smartphone, but it was a flip phone with a camera, which was a Nokia N93. And that was basically 2007. And I managed to convince him to get a couple of them. And because I used to manage a team of camera crews at this time, and I'd commissioned one of the camera crews to take it out and to shoot a story with it to see what the quality was like, to see what we could achieve or what were the learnings. So it was like a pilot project. And the takeaways were very simple. Number one, the video files were some obscure 3GV file or something which you couldn't code. The codec was unreadable. It took hours to make it work. So editing was a nightmare. The sound was a problem because there's no external mic. But as a pocketable device that could shoot video, I saw the potential. And I remember actually having a conversation with one of the senior correspondents about it, saying, once these things have connectivity to the internet over Wi-Fi rather than over what was then 3GP, um, things will change. I can immediately see that we would be able to basically send video files straight from these things, and we may be able to live stream. And then when the iPhone came on stream, got a first version of it pretty much on, and the first Android, and started to play with it, and then started to make a case to my boss to say, look, I'm training people on video journalism style cameras, 5, 6, 7,000 euro cameras. But the problem in every newsroom that I've been to is that there's 50 journalists and there's 5 cameras. So you have a bottleneck. But what if we can make a case that says, well, what if we use like 5 big professional cameras for specific situations and then use smartphones or, first generation, second generation, like by the iPhone 4, it had
Yeah,
become,
yeah.
right. And then they gave me the head of news and the head of technology in RT gave me a budget and said, go and do some research, come back with a report of what you found, see if you can find apps, accessories, so on and so forth. And I started researching in anger, and that was where I found Handheld Hollywood, Taz Goldstein.
Yeah.
He had a very good blog, Handheld Hollywood, and he talked about things like the Audi Bubo, and he seemed to have first point of contact on lots of the equipment that was coming out for filmmakers. It was through him that I found out about Filmic Pro and Neil Barham and all the team that were working on that. And then
Len, Len.
Len made a visit to Ireland. He was reporting on a game because he's a sports reporter from the US, and he connected with me and said, "Listen, can I pop into RT for a chat?" And we in my office we were having a conversation around the rise of it, the potential of it. Len was a very early adopter because he used to work for a brand. I've forgotten the name of them. It'll come to me.
I don't remember. It was following football, American football, isn't it?
But he worked for a brand that actually was the very first brand to think we can transform journalism, and it's a real pity that they didn't actually achieve that. The name of it will come to me, but we are going back 15 years ago, so it's a long time. But they were first there.
Len,
They
if
had,
you are there, just let us know
yeah, Len,
which one was the name of the brand.
I can Google it. But anyway, yeah. So long story short, we got into a fairly good discussion about what needs to happen to move this forward. And he talked about the fact that there seemed to be pockets of people researching around the world. And at this time, I'd already met Mark Settle in BBC and in Garnet in BBC. And there was already a little small cohort of people who were experimenting. And in that conversation with Len, we sort of said, well, what we need to do is bring everyone together and have a conversation around this, just like we're doing in the office right now. And we kicked that back and forward a bit, and then it took me 4 years to convince RT to make that happen, basically. So from that point on, I kind of, okay, an event. I'd never organized an event before, but I started to look at it. I started to attend and speak at other events. I started to get a sense of exactly what we might do and what my vision for what it might look like would be. But then it took quite a long time to convince. I mean, my boss was very supportive, thankfully. It would never have happened without him, Richard Waghorn. But it was the other management people that basically controlled the money who were very, very hard to convince. One, they didn't believe in the idea of mobile in the first place. And two, RT was in financial difficulty, as it I think probably still is. Most of broadcasters are. And they just didn't want to take the risk on an event that was a complete unknown. So it took me quite a while to convince them that it was necessary. And I don't know if there was one particular inflection point where it all clicked into place, really, but I do remember I applied for that role as head of innovation at RT. I think it was 2012. And on the day that I applied for that job, one of the things that I said would be my deliverables was an international conference on mobile journalism. So even at that stage, I was putting it as part of my core objectives for the next couple of years. So there you go. That was it. But Len was
So
pivotal. Yeah.
there was a time for MojoCon, and then there was a time for Mojofest, and then the community evaluated. Uh, can you tell me something about these years? I think you started it in 2015, if I don't remember bad, at the Aviva Stadium in Dublin. And then you moved to Galway. That is a sort of a place of my heart. I left my heart in Galway. And I probably you too. You've left your heart in Galway. And
Yeah.
and so
Uh,
the community began its life and grew up, grew up, grew up. Tell me something about these years of the story.
yeah. 2015 was the first one. March 2015 was MojoCon RTE MojoCon 1. It was actually at the Dublin Convention Centre, the biggest convention centre in the country, which was probably a little ambitious, to be fair. But my feeling was, to launch a new event, we needed to set the stage, so to speak, as saying that this is a big event. This is not a kind of a parochial gathering. This is an international conference. So we went to the International Conference Centre. And I realized exactly how much I didn't know about organizing conferences within about an hour. The Wi-Fi failed. We had no one wrangling speakers, so I was running around the place like a crazy guy trying to find people to get them up on stage. There was no MC. Like, I look back now and I actually honestly start to blush pretty quickly when I think about it. But there was one thing that I remember vividly from the first one, and this is an indication of bringing people from online to in person. I didn't hear it once. I didn't hear it 10 times. I probably heard it a couple of hundred times, which is people wandering around the foyer over coffee breaks and thinking, oh my God, you're such and such. I follow you on Twitter. If I heard it once, I heard it. So clearly, community actually already existed. They were already out there. They were just all over the place. And what all we did was give them a reason to get together. That's what MojoCon was. It was a reason to bring a community that already existed together. And I mean, it was great because I was so delighted with the amount of people who took a punt on the event for the first time, like the exhibitors, the speakers. And it really, at the end of it, the bosses in RT went, so what do you think? Were you happy with it? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I'm happy with it. And they went, well, we're not, because it lost 30,000 euros. I was like, oh. Um, but I was
How
training.
how did you justify this to the people who was controlling the money?
Yeah, so they put me to work, Francesco. They started to contract me out, and they gave me a deadline by the end of the year to basically make back that 30,000 euros on external training. And I'm pretty sure I hit it, if didn't exceed it. But yeah, so I went with, and I started to do external training.
So
They
you personally
it
paid the loss.
Yeah, Yeah. And that was the price to make it happen a second time. That I was
Yeah.
willing to put the time in to basically make sure that it didn't actually cost taxpayer money, that it broke even. And then from that point on, everything was prefaced on, we'll do it again, but it has to break even. It doesn't have to make money, but it cannot cost the company money. That's the deal. And that was the thing that set the bar for number two, which was also in Dublin in the Aviva. And that was definitely much better produced because I had learned a lot. And yeah, I think number two was the most successful one of all of them. Also, the biggest numbers. We had 740 people, I think, for number two. Even Apple unofficially came along with people from Cupertino and the UK office. So it was very interesting to see what the conversation on that one were like. But then the one thing, the reason I moved it to Galway, as you touch on Galway, the reason I moved it to Galway genuinely was this: if the main purpose of the event was to bring a community together, Dublin was failing in that regard in one way in particular, which was we organized networking nights in Dublin year two. And of 700 people that registered for the event, less than 100 turned up for the networking event.
Yeah.
And, and
Yeah.
I just thought, so what can I take away from this? Because I feel that because it's the capital city, because there's so many places you can go as a tourist, you know, you can go to Trinity, you can go to the Guinness Storehouse. There's loads of places you can go. People were doing that. And I respect that. But what I wanted to do was to create a space where people would actually stay together and meet each other and network and collaborate. And having lived in Galway, in fact, my career at the age of 21, I moved to Galway because my best friend was living there. And I went to visit for a weekend and I ended up staying for 17 years. So, like you, my heart did definitely go to Galway. Um,
Yeah.
Bottom line is that I knew that if you go to Galway, it's one main street. It's full of culture. It's full of life. But when you go to Galway, you can't dissipate. You're on that street. So you can go into any one of the 40 pubs on that street and you're going to
Yeah.
meet someone.
Yeah.
And
Of
it took
course.
time to convince RT to let me do that because they were worried that it wouldn't have the same traction and lots of things. But actually, that was the very last one I did in RT. And also, I think that overall, I got the best feedback from all the exhibitors for that first year in Galway. So the first 3 years, or for the 3 years of RT MojoCon, including the move to Galway, there was logic to all of it for sure.
Yeah. I think that the thing that you said was really important because if you wanted to create a community, the community has to pass from networking.
Yeah.
And that was so important to all of us, definitely. And so you moved the situation from MojoCon to Mojofest, and you split it the things, and you realized that it was, I think, your life that
Well,
was
yeah,
changing, or not.
so a couple of things had started to around 2017. Several different things happened. So the first thing is just before the last MojoCon in 2017, my dad passed away, and that had quite a big impact on me after the event. I mean, I just stayed focused on the event for the 3 months after he passed away to when it happened, but then ended up in hospital with a suspected heart attack afterwards. So I
Yeah.
might have just it all and barreled up. Anyway, the long story short is I already knew that my time in RT was coming to a close. I had done that was my 20th year in RTE between TGCAR and RTE. And I just knew that I wanted to do something else. I was already traveling quite a bit doing external training for
Yeah.
RTE.
Yeah.
And I just kind of realized there's nowhere else for me to go in RTE. The position I was at as head of innovation, the only place I could go was the CTO job, the chief technical officer, which was my boss's job. And I didn't have an MBA and I had no interest in getting one. So like I could have just stayed for 20 years to retirement, but I just thought, nah, there's a chance here. There's something. I think it's worth a gamble. And bless my wife who stuck with me on it because, walking away from a good, decent
Yeah,
salary,
from the certain
uh,
to uncertain.
yeah, and giving up the pension and the regularity of it and everything was a big, big gamble. Particularly at then we had two kids, but she supported me on it, and we just agreed, okay, we'll be business partners. Risky in a marriage, but anyway, we get on really well,
Yeah.
so we
Mm,
became business
mm,
partners. And the one thing was, I asked as I was leaving RT, I asked, did they plan to run it again after I left? And the then director general said yes, they did because the last one actually made money. Didn't make a lot, but it made money. It wasn't just a break even. Um, And she said, yeah, they're going to run it even after I leave, that they would go ahead and run it again. And I kind of thought, that'll be interesting. And then the devil in me, because I'm stubborn as a mule, I started to say, well, I'm going to run one as well. So good luck at yours, and I hope they don't clash. But anyway, thanks a lot. Bye bye. And after a bit of, obviously that was being very rude to a senior member of staff. But anyway, the bottom line is several months later, I got word that RT had decided that they weren't going to run one, but that we could collaborate on supporting it, and that was a gift because I wanted to do it myself because clearly it kind of had gotten through 3 times already, and the deal was that RT would be the media partner and help to amplify it in return for being associated with it with branding and stuff, which is great. It meant that it kept the relationship, but it was my event. And yeah, and that was the start of Mojofest. And the first year we tried it not just as a conference, but we did actually do an awards show in 2018, um, which also didn't make any money, which seems to be the story of my life, Francesco. When I look back at things, like all a bit bad. But anyway, but it was great, and there was a really good community, and we had a really good vibe at the event. And yeah, I did another one in Galway the following year, 2019. That was probably for me the highlight event of all the ones that I did, just because that year we had Wad Al Khatib as one of our keynote speakers, and I had met Wad 2 years previous on a course, and she's that Syrian woman who was nominated for an Oscar for her movie for Sama, which I got to see first immediately after she edited it and was profoundly moved by it. So I was so thrilled that she came. And then we had Dima Khatib, who was the head of Al Jazeera Plus, AJ Plus, their kind of Gen XYZ startup at the time. And some of the stuff she shared on the stage really left me quite, focused, if you like, on recipes for success. So that last one in Galway was great, but then COVID struck and killed it. Whatever plans I had about possibly doing it again. And even at then, I was thinking, this is 2019. I kind of thought, I think we possibly have achieved everything that we wanted to achieve. I'm not sure. In the sense the community was already there and it was a vibrant community. At that stage, the one thing that I took away from the event is anyone who was there on stage was saying this is normal now. There's nothing special or kind of pioneering about it anymore. Within the 5 years that the event has been running, it had become standardized in practice.
Yeah.
So I wondered, is there still a role for Mojofest? When we went into COVID, I was planning to do it again. But then the 2 year hiatus really made me sit back and kind of think, okay, it may have come and passed. It may have been done. That's it. Um,
And now we arrive to the present. Mojo Fest went to London, and then in the 10th anniversary is
we're,
going to come back
yeah.
or not?
So I'll be honest with you. I'll say it straight out. My greatest regret was London. Straight up, my greatest regret was London. There were a lot of
Why?
things. Uh, what wasn't in the public domain at the time is that there was talk about Mojofest possibly being acquired by the company that we went in with. They had said they were interested to learn more about it. They had already done an acquisition of another media event and wanted to consolidate. And at that stage, I as well, the training part of my work was definitely the bread and butter, and that's what was taking up most of my time at that stage. So I was kind of going, I would love to see it grow, but I know that I don't have the capacity to give more time to it than what I'm giving right now. So I could keep doing the same thing over and over. But I was pretty sure that if it was to scale, if it was to grow in any way, it probably needed a team, which is what MPTS has because they run events all the time. They have a national magazine. They just had everything that I think would have been necessary to make Mojofest really scale. But anyway, the event itself in London, which was in a shoebox, after being a fairly big event with a big presence, great staging and everything, we ended up in a shoebox, and I was kind of really disappointed with that.
A
And
sort of downgrade.
yeah, it really felt like I really felt like I just kind of. And by the way, the shoebox was defined by the amount of exhibitors that came. In other words, there was a relationship between the amount of exhibitors dictate how much floor space you get. And the problem is after COVID, most of the exhibitors, even the big ones that I still work with today, didn't want to travel. So it was only like a handful of exhibitors to whom I'm hugely grateful because that event would never have happened. But there is one person that I want to name check in all of this, which is Matt Feinberg from what used to be KineMaster. So KineMaster came along in 2016, and that's when I met Matt in person for the first time. And he, interestingly, I met him. I was on speaking at an event in Korea, South Korea, in
Yeah,
2017. Year I
presenting a light motion.
Yes, so that's right. So I met him in South Korea when when I decided to leave RT. He had decided to leave KineMaster, and he announced to me there over dinner that he's going to launch this new company called Alight Motion. So he brought Alight Motion to Mojofest in 2018, I think it was, in their first year. And he, interestingly, just to bring it full circle, that company was acquired in 2022 by the same company that bought Filmic Pro. So his company sold 5 years later, basically, while we were in London, while we were actually at Mojofest in London, because I remember going out for dinner with him and he started said, "That's it, the deal is done." You know?
It's an
So
Italian company, if I
it is
remember well.
bending spoon.
Definitely
Yeah,
bending
bending.
spoons.
Yeah,
But I don't know if they're doing a good service for mobile journalists right now. But let's continue to chat about Mojo Fest
yeah.
now.
Okay, so the reason
Why,
I'm Matt is
why did you decided to
to bring.
run back to give the possibility to Mojo Fest to come back?
Yeah, so that's why I mentioned Matt Feinberg actually, because I was at IBC in Amsterdam, the big technology show. Because last year I did quite a few events with different brands, including Touch and a few others. And I was at IBC and I met Matt, and Matt said, "I want you to bring Mojo Fest back." And I was, oh yeah, it's
Oh
kind of
no.
London was it, Matt. We had our high point, and then we were on the downward curve, and I think I'm done. And he went, no, I have a new company that I'd like to see introduced to the Mojo community, and I'd like you to run Mojo Fest again, and I'll support you. We'll sponsor it. So let's have a conversation about how we can make it work. And that was the trigger at that stage. Up until that point, for me, Mojo Fest had done what it had set out to do. I was unconvinced, but he said one thing that I kind of in the back of my mind was aware of, which was the rise of AI. And he said the thing about it is that while the conversation around mobile journalism per se is over 15 years now, it's a thing. There's nothing new to celebrate. What AI is going to do to this industry is a big, big topic. And while loads of
Yeah.
people are about AI in other spaces, there are very few people talking about AI, particularly in content production, media production, and in journalism. So that's why Mojofest needs to come back. And it was like
So,
the light
so,
bulb, which had
so,
been quite dim. Bing.
we give a warm embrace to Susan Newhook and to Matthew Feinberg, that is a friend of us. The thing that I can say is that this was an international community, but this was
Mm-hmm.
also a friend community. So we arrived to have relations, real professional relations and friendship relations starting from this event, and we arrived to change our life. That's what Mojo Fest bring to me. It definitely changed my life. It definitely changed the way I was acting journalism, thinking about journalism, thinking about my business, thinking about my life. Also for the approach, not only for the technical skills that you had to have to do this job in a modern way, not only about apps, not only about smartphones. It was not a matter of tech. It was a matter of people that desired to change the way they were doing their job or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that community, that's probably the other reason that I think it needed to come back, because the community that was very, very vibrant on Facebook started to dissipate. Several people said it to me. There's I don't know, is it 7,400 members on the Facebook community for Mojo Fest? When I post on it as the founder and one of the admins, 100 people see the posts tops. So whether people are just not participating anymore because it's kind of all done, or whether the Facebook algorithm is deplatforming us because we know that they deplatform stuff relative to news, the community there is suffering. And I honestly believe that bringing people back around the table for an updated conversation around what AI is about to do to the business is really, really important. And that community of people around the world, like I'm still in contact with a huge amount of the people that have attended Mojo Fest these days through chat apps like WhatsApp, ironically. Um, it still exists, but I think the real best conversations is when you can gather around a table. sometimes with a pint, and have a chat.
So, what will Mojofest be like? What will be um, his message? You think what is the program that you have? This the is the target that you have for this new Mojofest?
Well, the sessions that I've chosen this time around are they're topical based on what I think are the trends this time around, in the sense that there's two panels leaning into artificial intelligence, and they're not. I've been at so many events where it's just founders getting up saying how great their new app is. It's not that. I want a conversation around trust in the age of AI, which is the most pertinent conversation in the media business right now. I think most news organizations are grappling with what their AI strategy will be, how they manage deployment of AI tools. And by the way, even though I may sound like the harbinger of doom around AI, like I use AI prolifically, but I'm also very aware of what the current kind of level of research and development is and the evolution of it. And that's the bit that I'm worried about. I'm not saying it is no value. I'm not saying it's not useful. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying it's overhyped and it has the potential to be very, very dangerous if it's misused. That's what I'm saying. And I think the really important thing is to hear from other people who have opinions in that as well. Because again, the media business is in a state of decline. The current president in the US is probably going to accelerate that. And the fact that it is so closely aligned with Mr. Musk, who basically has already indicated that he wants all the guardrails and regulations removed around AI development, that to me is not a good thing. So for me, having talked about AI now for 2.5 years, I feel that there's a need to have a panel of people who are influential within the media community who are thinking and really have their finger on the pulse about how AI trends are going and where they could go. So that's a big theme, but it is not an AI conference. It's not an AI conference. So we still have sessions on the latest evolution, because in the last 2 years, mobiles, just look at Apple with Apple
Yeah,
Log.
yeah,
The
yeah.
That's all evolved. We're into film level. I mean, Danny Boyle's 12 and a half years or whatever it is that's coming out soon is definitely going to blow the lid once again on the high end production stuff you can do with the phone. So we have panels on that. There's a one on business, the business of news, looking at the idea of how do you actually make a sustainable business, which I think is a very topical conversation right now.
Of course.
And then vertical, which I've resisted for years, as you well know. But I- I'm 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 hopeful to have.
Because we are guys of the past century.
Yeah, see, there you go. My eyes are still side by side. They haven't gone this way yet. So anyway, oh, but I don't want to name drop because it's not confirmed yet. But I have hopefully got a very senior member of management from CNN to come and talk about their strategy on vertical storytelling, because they have some really interesting projects in the pipeline this year. I can't speak about them, although if you do Google search it,
No,
you'll.
no, 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 don't spoiler too much
Uh,
because, uh, we have to convince the people to be there because Mojofest is a place to be, definitely. If you want to know uh, how the future will go, I take the camera for a while just to remind to the people that is listening to us that we are live doing some peculiar things. Um, Mojofest is a place to be, and I take the computer to let the people know that there's online the site of Mojofest that is mojofest.eu
mhm.
and 50 days to go. And in the site you can find everything about the conference, 32 speakers, 2 days of conference at the University of Dublin
Yep.
conference center, more than 400 and here is the speaker spotlight, and then you can buy your tickets. Dan Rubin is going to come back, and I'm so pleased of that. We can show the speakers lineup. Anna Wilson, that is it's a star, I think.
Yeah, she's right.
Courtney G. Jones, Chanel Cowell, Mick Reed, Masha Lavrova, CJ Van Breda, and others are joining in these days. I make a little analysis about the position and the job of the journalist in the AI world. I am delivering courses right now with colleagues, and I say, don't be afraid about the AI because you will remain mm, someone important when you project the experience of the lecturer, the spectator, and so on. And when you verify the output that the machines gives you. So you have to remain unique in another language that is not your language, but is the prompting language, and try to be aware that your position of reality mediator, of social mediator, on someone who brings the reality that is really hard to understand to the people. You have to remain that. When you prompt, when you write the prompt, and when you verify the output. And then another thing that I put on my analysis is that the most important thing is not verifying that a new that an information that you find on internet is real or fake. The most important thing now has become to give the people the instruments to verify if this new is real or fake. Am I doing a good analysis or not?
Yep, yeah, I think that's good advice, definitely.
And I have to say also that we are live in this channel. That is my channel. I chat about technology, media, social, artificial intelligence, giving the sense, giving the importance for you, the relevancy for you. If you have questions about our topic and about Glenn and about Mojofest, just drop it in the chat of this live and we will be happy to answer. And subscribe to the channel also and activate notifications because this is a community. And only with notification you will be getting notified if there are some other videos. So we are finishing our chat, and I usually make something like a game, giving you 4 words that are important for you. So let's start to see the graphics. The first is smartphone. Can you tell me, Glenn, which was the first smartphone? You said N93 of Nokia, but which were your first smartphones and your first gears with which you delivered the TV services or filming in general?
Yeah, so in that early phase, when I was doing the research, I was playing with things like the Auli Bubo. I know Mark Settle remembers this because they had them in BBC as well. So the Auli Bubo was probably the first accessory that I bought to try, but the one that was transformative and we actually used in our first kits was one called the Fostex AR4i. And as it happens,
Wow.
I
Mhm.
got the genes from my dad. If I was to show you what's behind that curtain, I'm pretty sure there's an Ali Bubo and an AR4i up there somewhere. Uh, I'll open a museum at some stage.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You
Yeah,
have your personal museum, isn't it? You
right
have
there.
your personal museum.
So that was it. The AR4i from Prostex was the one that was transformative because you could plug 2 microphones into your phone. and you could put a lens system on. So also auto clip launcher around the same time, and you could slap on an auto clip onto your iPhone 4 or 4S. It's that far back, but that was the first bit of kit that I basically used in anger.
And which were your sensation when you had in your hands for the first time uh, an iPhone?
Yeah, well, so for the last year, I've been associated with a brand called Tilta, and it was I approached them. They didn't approach me, and the reason I approached them is because I saw a prototype of what they were planning, and for the first time ever, I thought this is amazing. One company that basically has thought of all the shortcomings of shooting with the phone. So I asked them, could I have access to the prototype, give them review, whatever they wanted. And actually, they sent me one of the first iterations of it before it was even in full production. So I got to see it before it was in full production. And to be fair to them, I've worked with lots of companies over my career. They are incredibly responsive. Like every piece of feedback that I gave them, they changed, which is incredible. So that piece of kit is what I shoot with in anger. I now have two of those kits that I use. You will see them at the show if you come, because we're going to do a podcasting studio. I have an anchor, I have a presenter who will be interviewing some of the speakers when they come off stage. It'll be short, but podcast type, but with video. And you'll see the setup. I'll have two of my rigs basically there with another camera for the setup. So you'll see the Chronos system in anger. But honestly, the first day that arrived, it felt like there were possibly clouds parting and angels singing types. So I was like, holy crap, this is the first time I've actually felt a piece of kit that is a complete solution. You just need to add a microphone and you're good to go. So that's definitely been the epiphany. I've had lots of gear over the years, small rig and lots of other brands, but this is the first time that I picked something up and went, actually, this looks professional, but it's not just the look of it. It actually addresses all the shortcomings of shooting with a phone in one solution. So that's my epiphany one for sure.
So the second word that I see is journey. You
Hmm.
made a sort of journey inside the world of journalism, changing the way we are journalists and changing the industry because it was obliged to recognize that mobile journalism was a fact. And then I will tell you also that I think mobile journalism is a category that has come to an end because for me, journalism acted as we act is modern journalism. It's journalism, it's simply journalism.
Hmm.
Um, what is journey for you? You made a lot of journey going around and delivering trainings, but also your life was a great journey.
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea in 20, whatever it was, in 2007, 2008, when I started playing with phones, that it would take me where it has taken me. I mean, I've always known I wanted to work in production, like I said, but I had no idea that experience and that ultimate kind of just series of events, it was serendipity. I'd love to say it was all planned. It wasn't. It was purely incidental, but nonetheless, it has taken me on an amazing journey, and I've been very, very fortunate to travel internationally. I was in China for the first time last year. I've been to the Far East multiple times. I've been in the Middle East 50 times over the last decade. So I've had a huge amount of travel, and all on the back of this one genre of training. Um, so I mean, I'm very, very fortunate from that regard. Where the journey takes me next, I don't know. I'm definitely feeling my age increasingly these days when I'm teaching
Me
20
too.
something. I teach on a master's program in UCD, which is where the conference is being held with CNN. And sometimes when I'm teaching 20 somethings, I realize how old I am. Not just looking in the mirror, but just listening to behaviors and the way that they consume news is just so different to what my behaviors have been in the past. So what I think at the heart of it all, and I think you're right, Francesco, and I don't think we need really call it mobile journalism anymore. It's just journalism or good digital storytelling even, because it transcends just journalism, doesn't it? But that's probably where my focus is now, because those skills, ironically, wait for this. So when I'm teaching 20 somethings, most of them do not watch television news. They don't know what a traditional TV news report is. Their only frame of reference for storytelling is short form content on platforms like TikTok. And while some creators do a very good job of telling a great story in a minute, an awful lot of people do a pretty crappy job of it, to be perfectly honest, and it's just pure dopamine fodder. So the skill of storytelling is an evergreen skill. it needs to be able to transcend different platforms, but that's where I'm positioning myself now. It's basically move towards the evergreen, but go back to the idea of really good storytelling. And to tap into what we started with when we talk about AI, for now at least, one of the things that AI is atrociously bad at is empathy. And I think that's where that human touch and that polarization value is going to come. So if I can do anything for the next generation of journalists, it is to make sure that they are in touch with this idea of the human aspect, being willing to be in communication with their audience and not see them as just a place to share to, but actually engage them as an active community. I think that's key to building your own brand. And then, yeah, just trying to equip people with a set of skills that is as diverse as possible so they can turn their hand to multiple different content outputs. There's still a need for that training. So those are the things that I'm focusing on the journey for the future.
Uh, I agree with you. Um, Even when you talk about the sense that the journalist has to have when they do their job, not considering categories, because we used in the past consider that categories, radio journalist, TV journalist, um, written journalist, and something like that were important. But now I think that journalist is a project manager and a producer for multimedia content for information in general. That is not depending on the medium you are on, it's not depending on the platform you are on. You have to be technically and journalistically prepared to be a journalist everywhere. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think a fast route to oblivion is to basically latch onto and hold on for dear life onto the discipline of what you already know. Don't think that's a strategy going forward. So everyone, whether they want to be or not, I'm afraid, is now by necessity a digital cross-platform storyteller. They may still have a specialism, and I'm all in for that. I think if you're really good at one thing and good at several other things, that's the best possible strategy. But the bottom line is that the day when you can just say I'm just a print journalist and that's all I do, if you're still managing to draw a salary with that, more power to you. But I'm afraid I'm not too sure we'll be still having that conversation in 5 years' time. That's just the harsh reality.
So, Mojo, we can say thanks, Mojo. It was a good journey with you, but that's the end because we are inside the changement of journalism, because mobile journalism now is broadcast journalism, is social journalism, is AI journalism. Is the Mojo journey finished at the end?
I don't know that we're there just yet, but we're definitely past peak. I think there's a lot of vibe, I think, to sort of say that it's just normalized now. There's nothing new and shiny about it. In fact, the hype cycle, like I say, is 100% around AI these days. While I still do more AI, sorry, I still do more Mojo training than AI training still. I can definitely see a point probably in the next 2 to 3 years when the need for mobile training dissipates. Um, Hence, having other alternatives and places to invest your energy is always a good idea. So I'm not saying I'm planning retirement yet, Francesco, but looking at other options is always good. There is that the other challenge, yeah, is
Listen, I want to finish this chat, and I thank you for your disposal. And I want to finish this chat um, talking about the role of the media,
mhm.
because as I can see from my point of view, and parenthesis, I apologize for my English that it's absolutely awful.
Not at all.
Um, Parenthesis closed. What I see at my point of view is that the movement of Mr. Musk is to disintermediate the role of media and give the role of media to social media. And that is a challenge for journalists and for publishers also. How do you think that this challenge, this war between social media and media will end?
Well, that's one of the main reasons that I believe that the idea of the solo journalist is so bloody important going forward.
Yeah,
He can bring policies in that make it virtually impossible for big media organizations to survive. I fully expect that's coming. It's already started to trickle out a bit. Um, but what he can't do yet, at least, is control a mass army, and I mean that word in only numbers sense, of independent journalists who still uphold trust and integrity at the heart of what they do. He has proven. I used to be a fan of Musk. I used to think that he was a genius, too hard a word, but I thought with both Tesla and Starlink, transforming those industries was pivotal. But where he is putting his energy now, encouraging the right, the rise of fascism, the far right, claiming that Twitter, or X as it is now, basically is the town hall, unless you say something that he doesn't approve of, whereby you get shadow banned or muted. I'm afraid he's going into a very, very, very dark space. So much so that let me show you. I got these printed for my. I have a Starlink dish. Have had for quite a while. I don't know if you can read that. Can you?
purchased. No, no, read it for me. Read it for
So
me because my glasses are not working properly.
it's a sticker for the back of my Starlink dish that says "Purchased before the company owner went batshit mental." That's what I think about now, and I'm worried because he has the ear of the most powerful man on the planet, who's already proven from his previous tenure as president is relatively unhinged and definitely at the disposal of the super rich. My genuine concern, like if we want to go down the rabbit hole, is that the ultra rich, the one percenters who basically control AI, because they do, whether you want to admit it or not, they do, um, have a vision of the future that most of us are oblivious to and have no idea of. If you want some scary stuff, start to Google search things like transhumanism and the singularity. These are the sort of words that most people are absolutely oblivious to. But these guys at the cutting edge of AI evolution are intimately aware of and are already planning for. And that's scary. That's scary. So I think the media business needs to adapt. It needs to uphold the idea of holding power to account, which is going to become increasingly difficult, but it needs to have trust and integrity at its heart, because in a sea, and or to use Mick Reed's expression, a tsunami of disinformation, which can be generated in seconds with AI, that idea of the voice of trust will never be more important. And that's why we need to keep the tribe going, Francesco. Call it mojo or not, the professional journalists who use digital skills proficiently to engage with their audience is still an absolute required skill set.
So we have come to the end. I can stay hours to chat with this guy, but I'm pleased to tell everybody that I was one of the early buyers of the ticket for Mojofest. So we will meet in Dublin, and it will be a pleasure. Thank you, Glenn, for being with me in this live, and thank you to all the people that watched. And so, how can we live ourselves? Uh, can we trust in humans? We live ourselves hoping this.
Um, I think what you need to do is the most important thing that we do going forward is a behavioral change that involves questioning everything. That's it.
Questioning everything.
Questioning everything. So take nothing for granted. Always ask, who's the person behind this story? What might their motivation for writing this story be? Who is paying them? That's what I mean by question everything. Because with the rise of the influencer reporter, who are not associated with a brand, which is what I'm talking about, but these are people who are actually on the paycheck of big, large state operations. You can start to sway the social media narrative. This is why trust is the most important thing. That I know the people I follow, the people I get my news from, are trustworthy and have integrity and are accountable for what they say. So trust nothing in the first instance. Cross check everything, double check your sources, all good practices anyway. But at the end, I think we will start to form relationships and coalesce more around people that we trust online. They will become the community that we move with in the future. And I think that will spread. I think over time, people will start to gravitate in communities around that. So it's already happening, to be fair. There's nothing transformative about what I'm saying, but I just think it's going to become amplified as we see the rise of AI.
Thank you, Glenn. Have a nice day. I give a warm embrace to all the members of your incredible family, starting from Mama Magic that I follow in his accounts. It was great to have you. It was great to hear you, and thank you for the incredible job you're doing for journalism. And let's meet in Dublin, 28th and 29th of April. You can still buy tickets on mojofest.eu. Have a nice day.
Thank
Ciao,
you so much.
Glenn.
Thank you so much, Francesco. Great to chat to you. See you soon. Bye bye.
Posso ricominciare a parlare italiano per salutarvi. Scusate il mio assolutamente incredibile inglese. Grazie a Glenn, grazie alla sua anima, al suo sogno, alla sua spinta, che ha attraversato questi anni, ha cambiato il modo di fare un mestiere. È stato un onore averlo qui con me a chiacchierare. Spero che questa live sia guardata da tanti colleghi giornalisti che hanno bisogno di una nuova direzione. Io sono Francesco Facchini, questo è il mio canale nel quale racconto il senso della tecnologia, cioè non come la tecnologia è, come la tecnologia performa, che prestazioni ha, che cose incredibili fa fare, ma se ha senso per te, se lo smartphone ha senso per te, se i social hanno senso per te, come vanno usati con senso, come vanno usati per connettersi con le persone, se la mobile content creation ha senso per te, se è importante per te, se l'AI è importante per il tuo lavoro e per il tuo futuro, per la tua vita e per i tuoi progetti. Vi auguro una buona continuazione di giornata e l'8 marzo, quindi auguri alle donne, ma che sia sempre 8 marzo. Io sono Francesco Facchini ed è stato un piacere stare in vostra compagnia.